Case is solved after nearly 20 years in Spartanburg County. An investigator with the coroner's office says the body of a woman was found back in 1998. She was nude and she had marks on her wrists. Investigators say she'd been strangled, and now after 20 years she's been identified as Myung-Hwa Cho. And they say her husband just confessed to the killing. Now, during their work to solve this case, investigators found out Cho was linked to a little boy whose remains were found along I-85 in Orange County, North Carolina, shortly after Cho's body was discovered. Fox Carolina's Kayla Conboy joins us live from the Spartanburg County Sheriff's Office. So, Kayla, how did they finally identify her after all those years?
Technology, that's really the long and short of it here. They were able to use DNA testing along with a missing persons database to make that match. And shortly after that, detectives from Orange County called and they said that they had a similar situation and they had noticed this case. So they made a few calls about it. That's when they ended up realizing that Cho was linked to the missing boy in their area. 215 miles, that's what separated a slain mother and son. For 2 decades, the case was unsolved. Their names and identities, a mystery.
You're always, for a lack of a better phrase, behind the 8 ball on a cold case, which is exactly why it's a cold case. It's about solving a case. It's about giving some peace to a family.
And that's what they can finally do for Cho's family. She was found near I-85, nude, strangled. But investigators didn't know much else. Rick Ellis says he knew finding out her name would be difficult after all this time. But he says prayer and divine blessing gave him a sense of direction in the case.
Wanted a new photograph because in the time that originally the case came, you could only use a black and white, because it was a death photograph.
He says the picture aged her, so he sent them off to SLED and got back this artist rendition.
I mean, it wasn't a dead ringer, but it had a lot of similarities.
And it worked. They finally had a name. Meanwhile, in North Carolina, investigators were working to do the same thing with the remains of a 10-year-old little boy, also found along 85.
My victim always remained the same age, 10, but I had a child, and that child eventually, reached the same age, 10 years old. And you look at things as a parent much differently.
The case hit Major Tim Horn hard, who says he always kept the little boy, Bobby Adam Witt, on his mind.
I always kept the case file, which was contained within an office box. I kept that box under my desk in my cubicle area so that it was in my way, quite frankly. Every time I turned or moved, I was hitting my leg on it. Not that I could forget it, but I wanted to make sure I never did.
Eventually, it led to answers. 20 years later, they linked the mother and son, and the boy's father just confessed to killing them both.
With my career, the time was running out, and it's just like in football. Time has expired, and there's a Hail Mary heave downfield as hard as they can throw it. And I feel like in that last second, as time was running out, that we came down with that football in the end zone and scored. That's exactly how I felt.
This case was solved on Horn's last day. He was actually able to retire Friday, knowing that he was able to get justice for Bobby. He tells me that this case really had a huge impact across his entire career. So he called that family personally, and now he will go and deliver it. He will deliver those remains to that family after 20 years. Reporting live in Spartanburg County, Kayla Conboy, Fox Carolina, the 10 o'clock news.